Hello and welcome to this short video lesson on occupational exposure limits. Occupational exposure limit or an OEL limit is an upper limit on the acceptable concentration of a hazardous substance in the workplace air for a particular substance. So if the occupational exposure limits are not exceeded, the worker can safely join the next shift without any adverse effect. So this is the upper limit. What are the factors to establish an OEL? It is based on the study of the dose effect and the dose response relationship and other factors. This is based on certain studies of the effect of that particular chemical substance on the human body. What are other factors? The physical and chemical properties of the substance, including the nature and the quantity of contaminants. So what are the toxicity, heat of combustion, oxidation state? A lot of different properties are involved which make a substance toxic to the human body. So all this must be studied. The ways in which the substance is expected to be used and features of the exposure of workers. So here we have to study which are the different ways in which the worker will come into contact or exposure to the particular hazardous substance, and all the types and concentrations in which the material will interact with the human worker. Other factors which are important are the results of experiments with laboratory animals designed to establish the acute local and general effects, that is irritation, sensitization on the skin, etc. What are the effects of repeated administration? It is possible that on a single exposure there is no effect, but on repeated exposure there could be some harmful effects. The chronic general effects, including those affecting the central nervous system, mutagenic, carcinogenic effects, etc. Some materials over a long period of time can cause chronic effects on the human and animal bodies. What are the other factors? The results of routine medical examination of exposed workers. The routine medical examinations may help us find what are the problems they're facing and what kind of hazardous substances they're being exposed to. Epidemiological investigation, that is the studies of the health of a large population of workers. Case studies of occupational diseases. There might be some other scientific studies into certain occupational diseases. Then how do you establish an OEL? Assemble all the information available on the hazards of the substance as well as physicochemical properties. Identify the adverse effects that may arise from exposure to the substance. So once we have gathered all the information from all the sources, then we can set an occupational exposure level. OEL is the same as PEL and WEL. Different terminologies are used in different places. In the US, it is permissible exposure limit. In the UK, it is workplace exposure limit. But they are the same things. What are the different types of OELs? There could be an 8 hours time-weighted average, TWA, considered as long-term exposure limit. There could be a 15 minutes time-weighted average, TWA, considered as a short-term exposure limit, Estelle. There could be a peak limitation or a ceiling value beyond which values are not accepted. LTEL, the long-term exposure limit, is intended to control such effects by restricting the total intake by inhalation over one or more work shifts. For example, hydrogen sulfide LTEL is around 10 ppm, parts per million. Estelle, the acceptable average exposure over a short period of time, usually 15 minutes, as long as the time-weighted average is not exceeded. For example, hydrogen sulfide Estelle is 15 ppm. This can be slightly higher than the LTEL. Ceiling value, workers' exposure to hazardous substance must not exceed ceiling value at any point of time. Hydrogen sulfide ceiling value is 50 ppm, which is the upper limit. At no point of time, the exposure of a worker to hydrogen sulfide, it must not exceed 50 parts per million. What are the limitations of the OEL approach? Actual doses received by workers can vary due to the work rate. For example, if there is an airborne contaminant, if he is exerting himself more, there is more exertion and breathing, so there can be higher exposure. errors in estimating exposure, different experimental errors, toxicological data on which limits are based are not themselves infallible. There could be some limitations on the toxicological data observed or obtained from a laboratory studies on animals. Chemicals can enter the human body by routes other than inhalation. For example, a chemical might get absorbed through the skin and cause problems. Further, the OELs do not consider synergetic, additive, and potentiating effect of mixtures. Individual susceptibilities to various substances is not concerned. Environmental factors like temperature, wind, etc. may increase or decrease the effect of the harmful substances. How is an OEL established? It is basically one of the major factors are studies describing the critical effects of chemical, the no observed adverse effect level, NOAEL is established. So that means below this, absolutely no adverse effect on the human body is observed. In those cases where it is not possible to establish a NOAEL, a lowest observed adverse effect level may be determined. So the other approach is you find the lowest observed adverse effect level. So what is NOAEL? Let's repeat the definition. The highest level of a test substance to which organisms can be exposed without causing any observed and statistically significant adverse effects on the organism. Again, we saw earlier that the effects of the chemicals may be different in different individuals, so therefore statistical significance is also very important here. LOEL, the lowest level of a test substance to which organisms can be exposed, causing an adverse alteration of morphology, functional capacity, growth development, or lifespan of a target organism. So here, this is the lowest level at which there are some harmful effects are seen on human bodies or animal bodies. We hope you enjoyed this short video lecture on occupational exposure limits. Your feedback and comments on this lesson will be deeply appreciated. Thank you.